Hi guys, sorry I'm a little bit late to this week's discussion post. I decided to cut off half my pinky nail. But today I'm going to walk you through an ethical case analysis involving a client named Alex. Alex is 28 years old, works in the gig economy, and has a history of crisis episodes. He has asked to receive counseling through asynchronous text messaging only. Another added layer of complexity is Alex's parents being the ones paying for counseling services, and the agency where I work, hypothetically, explicitly prohibits asynchronous text-only counseling. So over the next few minutes, I will apply the ACA 2014 Code of Ethics to each of the major ethical tensions in this case: competence, agency policy, technology, confidentiality, and third-party requests for records. I will also model what a scripted conversation with Alex would sound like before any information is released to the third party. The first issue that I'll need to address is competence. ACA standard C.2.A says that counselors may only practice within the boundaries of their education, training, supervised experience, and professional credentials. So the first question that I have to ask myself is, have I ever been specifically trained in text-based counseling? If the answer is no, which it is, agreeing to provide asynchronous text-only services to any client would raise ethical concerns. But with Alex specifically, the stakes are even higher. Text-only communication strips away all nonverbal cues. I cannot hear tone of voice, see facial expressions, or observe body language. For a client with a history of crisis and complex trauma, this creates a serious risk, and I can't assess risk in real time if Alex is in crisis between messages. That means before I even consider this modality, I need to be honest about whether my current skill set is adequate. Now, C.2.A does not mean that I have to refuse outright. ACA standard C.2.B provides a pathway. When a counselor wants to practice in a new specialty area, they must take reasonable steps to develop competence. In this case, that means I would need to complete continuing education specifically in distance counseling and text-based therapeutic modalities. I would also need to arrange clinical supervision with someone who has experience in asynchronous formats. Before agreeing to work with Alex this way, I would need to conduct a thorough risk assessment that accounts for the specific limitations of text-based communication, and I need to document all of this. A written competency development plan, supervision logs, and my rationale for the modality I ultimately chose. Given Alex's history of crisis, I would also develop a standalone safety plan that does not depend on my text response time. Because if Alex is in danger at 2 in the morning, a text I read the next day is not going to help. Here is where it gets complicated. Even if I completed C.2.A and C.2.B, including training, supervision, documentation, my agency prohibits asynchronous text-only counseling. So now I have a conflict between what Alex is requesting and what my employer allows. ACA standard I.1.B addresses this directly. It says that when there is a conflict between the Code of Ethics and organizational policy, I need to make my commitment to the code known and work toward resolving the conflict. In practice, that means I would sit down with my supervisor, agency leadership, explain why I believe text-based services could benefit this client, and ask whether an exception could be made with proper safeguards in place. I recommend revising the policy if the evidence supports it, but, and this is important, if the policy does not change, I do not violate it. Instead, I offer Alex the best alternative that does comply, whether that is synchronous video sessions, phone counseling, or a hybrid approach, and I document every step of the advocacy process in the clinical record. Now, let us talk about technology and social media. ACA Standard H.6.B addresses the counselor's virtual professional presence. The standard requires me to maintain a clear separation between my professional and personal social media accounts. But beyond having separate profiles, I need to establish a written social media policy as part of my informed consent document from the very first session. That policy needs to state clearly that I will not accept friends or follow requests from clients, will not initiate any social media connections with clients, and that any communication about counseling must happen through approved secure channels, not through direct messages on social media platforms. For Alex, this conversation happens at intake. I would say something like, I want you to know that I keep my professional and personal social media completely separate. I will not send you a friend request, and if you send one to me, I will not accept it. This is not personal. It is about protecting your privacy and our therapeutic relationship. ACA Standard H.6.C deals with the other side of this, the client's virtual presence. This is where things get nuanced. Let us say I'm scrolling through a public platform and I come across a post from Alex talking about heavy cannabis use or engaging in reckless behavior. What do? First, I do not panic and I do not ignore it. My job is to assess whether what I am seeing indicates imminent risk of harm to Alex or to someone else. If it does, I have a duty to act. That could mean reaching out, contacting emergency services, or following the crisis plan we developed together. If it does not rise to the level of imminent danger, I bring it into our next session therapeutically, not punitively. I might say, I happened to see something you posted publicly, and I wanted to check in with you about it. I also need to evaluate Alex's cannabis use in context. Is it legal in our state? How frequently is it happening? And is it impairing Alex's daily functioning? And all of this, what I saw, how I assessed it, and what I decided to do, gets documented. The key here is that my informed consent already told Alex this might happen. It should include language like, information observed on public platforms may be discussed in session if it is clinically relevant to your safety or treatment goals. This brings us to one of the most sensitive issues in Alex's case, the third-party request for records. Alex's parents are paying for counseling, and they have asked me to share information about how things are going. Here's what the ACA code says. Standard B.3.D states that when a third-party payer is involved, I must limit any disclosure to the minimum necessary information. Standard B.5.A reinforces that my primary responsibility is to the client, not to the person writing the check. And here's the critical point. Alex is 28 years old. Alex is a legally competent adult. The fact that Alex's parents are paying does not give them any automatic right to clinical records, session content, diagnosis information, or treatment details. When the parents make this request, my first response is not to hand over records. My first response is to respectfully explain to the parents that the payment does not entitle them to access protected health information. And then, before I do anything else, I sit down with Alex. Before I release any information to Alex's parents, I am ethically required to have a direct conversation with Alex. This is non-negotiable. In that conversation, I need to cover several things. First, I will tell Alex exactly what the parents have requested. No surprises. Second, I make it absolutely clear that Alex has the right to say no, and that saying no will have zero impact on our therapeutic relationship or the quality of care Alex receives. Third, I explain what information could be shared if Alex consents, and, just as importantly, what would not be shared. I help Alex understand the difference between general progress updates, such as confirming attendance, and clinical content, such as session notes or a diagnosis. I also make clear that any consent that Alex gives is revocable at any time. But I do not stop there. I also want to explore how Alex feels about this request. Is there pressure from the family? Is there a power dynamic at play that I need to be aware of clinically. And if Alex does decide to consent to a limited release, we prepare that summary together. Alex reviews every word before it goes to the parents. Now I want to model what this conversation with Alex would actually sound like. I'm going to read through the 4 counselor statements. After each one, imagine that I am pausing to give Alex space to respond. Here is the first line. Alex, I want to let you know that your parents reached out to me and asked if I could share some information about how things are going in our sessions. Before I respond to them at all, I wanted to talk with you about it. Second line. I want you to know. You have the absolute right to say no. Saying no will not change our work together in any way. Your records and what we talk about are confidential. Pause again to explore how he's feeling. Then the third line. If you do want to share something with them, we get to decide together exactly what that looks like. It could be as simple as confirming you're attending sessions. I would never share session details, your diagnosis, or anything you have not specifically approved. Then you pause to give Alex time to think and make a decision. And then the fourth line is, if you decide to share anything, I will write it up and you will review it before it goes to them. And you can change your mind at any point. Notice what I did there? I kept the power with Alex throughout. I did not rush. I named Alex's rights clearly and made the process collaborative. That is what informed consent sounds like in practice. So, where does all of this leave us? Here are the practical steps I would take moving forward. First, training. I would complete continued education in distance counseling and text-based modalities and document that completion in my professional file. Second, if I determine that I cannot build competence in a timely way, I would provide Alex with a warm referral to a provider who is already trained in text-based counseling, consistent with the ACA standard A.11.B. Third, documentation. I would maintain thorough records of every ethical decision I made, every supervision consultation I sought, and every conversation I had with Alex about modality and consent. Fourth, I would develop a written crisis safety plan with Alex that includes emergency contacts, a crisis hotline number, and a clear protocol for what to do when asynchronous response times are not fast enough. Fifth, if the agency approves and I have established competence, I would propose a 30-day trial of a hybrid approach, synchronous sessions combined with limited text check-ins, with a formal review at the end. And sixth, throughout all of this, I would schedule regular supervision with a provider experienced in technology-assisted counseling. It's a pretty solid plan. This slide here lists the first 4 ACA code sections I referenced throughout this presentation. C.2.A on boundaries of competence, C.2.B on new specialty areas of practice, H.6.B on the counselor's virtual professional presence, and H.6.C on the client's virtual presence. All of these come from the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics. And here are the remaining 4 sections. We've got B.3.D on third-party payers and minimal disclosures, B.5.A on our primary responsibility to protect client confidentiality, H.2.A on informed consent specific to distance counseling, and I.1.B on resolving conflicts between ethics and organizational policies. Together, these 8 standards form the ethical framework for every decision I discussed in Alex's case. I want to close with this thought. Ethical practice is not about having all the answers. It is about asking the right questions, consulting when we are unsure, and always, always centering the client's autonomy and well-being. Thank you for listening.